So we're going to talk today a little bit about understanding why people give. And if for any reason you think that I have all the answers, or I'm going to tell you something super, super enlightening, I'm going to tell you now that I'm going to disappoint you. I don't have all the answers. I've seen over the years some trends, why there's some stereotypes to why people give, but at the end of the day, I'm always surprised at least a couple times a month why someone chose to give to something as opposed to something else, or one organization over the other. And so a little bit of that comes from the psychology of giving. So let's get into that a little bit. And as Jordan said, you are welcome to ask questions. She's going to see if there's a theme. Because there's so many of you, I'm not going to be able to take questions, but she's going to do that for us. So please feel free to interrupt me. This is definitely a dialogue, and we're all going to be learning from each other. So kind of some of the objectives today is, and I'm old school, you guys, I write everything down. I've got sticky notes here, so forgive me. But our job as fundraisers and nonprofit professionals, even if fundraising isn't specifically what your job is to get to know the people that want to support your organization, and get to know why they chose you, or maybe why they didn't, why they chose someone else over you. And to ask the right questions. We want to better understand what drives people for their philanthropic decisions. And for me, that's everybody. That's somebody that gives $25 or $25 million. And so while often when we're talking about fundraising, a lot of people are thinking of big, large gifts that they see out in their communities. But for some of us, for some of you all, a big gift could be $1,000. So we really you want to think of this as applying it towards any of the donors that you work with, and how do you better get to know them, and kind of what is the background or the psychology around that. So why do people give? Big, big, big question. Why do people not give more? Why do people give more and give less, and who knows? So let's think about this for a minute. Love for you guys to add in the chat what you think your personal experiences is the #1 reason a donor decides to give to a nonprofit. I'm going to give you guys a minute to type that in, and Jordan can read out some of those answers. And then we're going to talk a little bit about it.
Oh, we've got a lot piling in here. This is awesome. I'll fire them away for you, Laura. Being identified with the mission, it pulls up their heart, a personal connection to the cause. They have a common interest, because someone they know asked them to. I love that one.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yep, there you go. Emotional appeal. And another one, just because they've been asked, and I assume that either the organization or one of their friends asked them. We have a lot of because they're asked.
Mm-hmm. Good. So you all get it, which is awesome. And not a lot of people think that that's true, but a lot of times it's just because you asked. And it might not be you, right? It might be a board member or another donor within the organization, and maybe you helped facilitate that ask. But people want to be asked, and when they're asked by people that they respect and that they admire for whatever reason, could just be personally, you have a personal relationship with them, or you're a leader in the community, or one of your board members is, and they respect that. That is really the #1 reason. But then all the other reasons that you guys listed, dedicated to the mission, they know that change is tangible. That's awesome. There's a concept called the warm glow, the warm feeling someone gets. Yes, it's altruistic in some ways, but sometimes just having that warm feeling is important to them. Some people give because it's a tax benefit. And I've had people tell me at the end of the day, I'm getting a big tax break, and so I'm thrilled. So, hey, I'm like, great, give it to us. We love it. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about how we can understand a little bit better as fundraisers why and how people give. So none of this that we're going to talk about right now is going to be mind-blowing. These are going to be concepts that you guys have heard and talked about in your own personal lives and relationships and stuff. But it is a good reminder that there is psychology behind all of this. And just taking a little bit of extra time when you're going to make an ask, or when you're starting to engage a donor, to learn a little bit more about them is going to be really, really, really important. So psychological influences we're going to get into, and then social and cultural influences too, right? So Cultural and customs, you know, the Jewish community is extremely philanthropic, statistically more philanthropic per household income than others. And so kind of understanding where people are coming from, their social class, their environment, how they grew up, where they grew up, and really kind of digging in a little bit deeper, being their therapist a little bit, but maybe behind the scenes. You don't have to let them know you're being their therapist. So this is what happens in the process from a donor's perspective, right? So they're thinking about, they're starting that process of where am I going to go? And this would be the assumption of they're starting to look for somewhere new, or they're thinking about something new of where they want to give their money. So they're going to go in and type a Google search. That could be a little overwhelming, right? So if you typed in best charity or the number one charity in India or in Florida, wherever you guys are at, you might get a lot of different hits on that. So one of the organizations that I just came from that Jordan mentioned, Support the Enlisted Project, I was there for 5 years, and towards the second half, we started getting a lot of donations through Charity Navigator. And then something happened that we didn't realize. We had been listed on Charity Navigator as one of the top 30 organizations that in the US that work with military and veteran families in whatever capacity. Well, there was over like 4,000 organizations. That was huge. And we were maybe a $1.5 million organization. So not small, but not huge either. They still are. I'm trying to get I'm 5 weeks in here at the midway. And so I'm trying to get the and you know, what family do I belong to? So love my previous organization. So sorry about that. They still are, and I think they're number 28 or 29. And for a small grassroots organization, that was really cool, but it took us a while to understand why that was happening. So when you were searching in Charity Navigator and you're searching for veterans issues, that was what was popping up. So sometimes that's where people are going to start. They're going to go through this process of, why do I want to give? What's happened in my life maybe recently? Go start looking. Maybe it's on the internet. Maybe it's, you know, looking around the community or asking people. And then, okay, what are these organizations doing that I enjoy or that I'm going to be committed to? How and why am I going to choose that one? And then continue to assess after they give, right? So do I have buyer's remorse? Is my donation being followed up with, or is my commitment being followed up with? Is the organization reaching out and keeping me engaged? They're going to go through that process over and over again at some level, right? So the psychology of giving, mood, attitude, self-image. So this is really interesting because this happens to all of us. I mean, this concept can be applied to, you know, just about anything in life, right? Your mood, your attitude, your self-image. So it's kind of the mood that you're currently in, but not necessarily like, oh, how do I feel today? It's kind of the mood of the world, of your country. So think about the last 2 or 3 years in the United States. Some of the issues that we have and continue to have has changed the mood, right? For better or for worse. We could talk through that on a whole nother day. But it's also inspired people to give and get engaged and get involved with maybe organizations they wouldn't have. I know it's motivated me quite a bit. And all sorts of social issues, political issues. But also turtles in Texas. I don't know if you guys remember this, when the weather, when Texas was freezing over and they had that huge issue of turtles that were becoming stunned. Listen, there was like 3 organizations. I saw videos of them online of these turtles and these people trying to find warm places to put them. And I'm like, oh my God, I sent blankets. I never really thought about turtles that much before, but the mood was, well, of course, we wanted to take care of the people that were there too. So I did give to a couple of those organizations too. I didn't prioritize the turtles over the humans necessarily, but for some reason I was very moved by the turtles, and a lot of them lived. But that was the mood, right? That was what was happening in the world, is that we're focused on Texas because of this crisis, right? National crisis, hurricanes, earthquakes, right? That can shift your mood about how you're seeing the world right then. And then attitude, right? So everyone's going to come from a perspective, a certain perspective, and they might arrive to you with an attitude that's a little bit about, well, you've always done it this way, so let's keep going this way. Or you've always done it that way, so let's go in a different direction. And you need to understand what attitude they're bringing to the table, because you're going to either agree, or you're going to want to counter it, or you're going to want to find a way around it, right? A lot of times over the years, I've worked with people that come in and they go, gosh, what you guys are doing is so great. I want to support it. Let's start a new program. And it's like, well, we can barely fund the programs we have now. So how do I get them to understand that, right? That while they might have a great idea, it's not probably as helpful as they think. And so how can I position myself for what I'm going to share with them and my engagement with them to align with their current attitude or their self-image, right? So we all have our own self-image of ourselves. And why are we choosing to give? Is it about ego? Is it about righting wrongs in your past, making up for something that you've done in the past? Is it just a sense of, I see myself as part of a bigger community, as part of being part of humanity, and that's really why I want to get involved and get engaged? I know it's like, you're not going to do this. You're not going to think about this stuff with every single donor that walks in your door. But if you just start thinking of the idea that every time you're engaging with someone with a different background, a different perspective, right? And so you just want to make sure that you're aware of that. You're probably most likely not going to be able to be, you don't want to change them, right? But you just want to be prepared for what their understanding is of philanthropy as best as you can, and of your organization. So the communication model. So the communication model is really talking about taking that little bit of information that you have ahead of time. And, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and social media has been a huge help in a lot of ways, right? Obviously, there's a lot of downsides to social media, but and it was funny because I remember when I started, I'm going to date myself. When I was in college is when emails came out, and I remember thinking, oh, that'll never catch on. That's way too much work to plug your computer into a wall and wait 20 minutes, and maybe you get a dial-up, maybe you don't. So don't take any stock tips from me. I did the exact same thing with social media. I remember thinking, oh, this is a phase. Who cares about what everyone's eating or doing? Well, again, I was kind of wrong. And it's allowed us to see into people's lives a little more personally, good or bad. But we can see people who are out doing philanthropic work, or maybe they're out riding, horses somewhere, and you had no idea they were even interested in horses. You can definitely find out a little bit more about their personality and their personal interests. And so when you go and sit down with them, or when you start communicating with them, sometimes that's email, phone, or in person, less and less in person these days, I know, but you're prepared. You have a little bit of an understanding. None of us are ever going to know someone by looking at their social media accounts or reading articles about them, but you're just going to have a little bit of a better understanding. So this is what that mental process looks like. So for any of you that have had any sort of therapy in your life, that concept of, can you repeat back to me, what you just heard, right? So I don't know about you, but my husband often hears not what I just said, although he would probably say the same thing. And so it's thinking about, how are you breaking down your message, and what is the perspective that you're coming from when you're breaking down that message, right? So, and there's different formats for different donors, right? So you're going to have different generation of donors, different types of donors. There may be language barriers. And so thinking about what that process looks like ahead of time. For a big major donor, a big ask, whatever that means to you, you're probably going to want to spend a lot of time invested in this. I don't know what that means. For me, that would mean, a couple of hours preparing, and probably not the day of, but over a certain period of time. And thinking about how I'm going to communicate this message to this particular person, knowing what I know.